Welcome to the last segment of Chapter 6. We're going to be talking about the surface of the cell, so cell membranes, as well as cell walls, and then lastly, cell-to-cell communication. You can almost think of this as an intro to Chapter 7, as Chapter 7 will deal with the cell surface completely, so we'll be talking about a lot of this stuff in this picture in Chapter 7. You're already probably a little familiar with the cell membrane or plasma membrane, or phospholipid bilayer, or simply put the bilayer, or sometimes just called membrane. It's talking about this double-layered feature here. We already know that they're made up of phospholipids, but there's more to it than just that. Most cells synthesize and secrete materials that are external to the plasma membrane or to the cell membrane. Extracellular structures include the cell walls of plants, the extracellular matrix of animals, and intercellular junctions. Some prokaryotes, fungi, and protists also have a cell wall. So cell walls are not exclusive to plants. As a result of allowing passage into or out of a cell, it offers protection by preventing some substances to either enter a cell, as well as preventing excessive intake of water. So not everything can get into a cell, not everything can get out. If too much of a substance such as water got into a cell, the cell would actually rupture. So there can be too much water. Recall that cell walls are made up of cellulose, which we spoke about in Unit 2. Cellulose occurs in parallel fibers, forming hydrogen bonds together, which reinforce the strength of the wall. In our images on the screen, we see cell walls. We have a nice cleaned up drawn one. We have this tiny box right here, and it's blown up, and we're actually seeing a real scan of the cell wall. The cell wall consists of three layers. We have the primary cell wall, which is right here. We have the middle lamella, which is right here. And then we have the secondary cell wall, which is considerably thick, found right here. The primary cell wall is thin and flexible. The middle lamella is between two neighboring cells, and the secondary cell wall is quite thick, and it's not necessary in all cells that contain cell walls. So all will have the primary and the middle lamella, but not all cell walls will contain the secondary one. Going down to this image here, we're going to look at these plasmodesmata, which are right here and here and here. There's four of them. As you can kind of see by what's going on here, the plasmodesmata allows these cells to communicate with one another. They're channels that link two neighboring cells together, and by communicate, I specifically mean things can pass through them. Things like water, small solutes, and occasionally proteins and RNA can pass through. So when I say cell-to-cell communication, I'm usually talking about sharing or exchanging of materials between them. And how else can cells communicate? There's a couple ways, three specifically that we're going to be targeting are the tight junctions, which are in this part of the picture, the desmosomes, which are in this part of the picture, and the gap junctions, which are right here in this part of the picture. All three allow cells to communicate. These will be found in animal cells as well as plant cells, whereas the plasmodesmata would be exclusive to plant. So tight junctions up at the top here, involve the tight pressing of neighboring cells together. So the cells are pressed together quite tightly to prevent any leakage of materials that might be exchanged. So we talked about some of the materials that could be exchanged, proteins, water, etc. So it's almost creating a seal by pressing the two cells together really, really tightly. Desmosomes, on the other hand, are anchoring junctions. You can almost think of these kind of like a ship to a dock with the ropes that are tying it in place. So the desmosomes, they anchor or fasten the cells together in a strong sheet. You'll find a lot of the desmosomes to occur between muscle cells where ions are exchanged. Then there are the gap junctions. We see the gap junctions right here. The gap junctions are channels between two cells, kind of like the plasmodesmata. You can almost think of the gap junctions kind of like those tunnels that you walk through when you're going from an airplane into the terminal. You have those temporary tunnels that are flexible and they can move to hook up to the plane, and that's the tunnel you would walk through when you're leaving the terminal and getting onto the plane, or vice versa. So this concludes the part of Chapter 6. And a lot of the stuff we didn't go into a whole lot of detail on, specifically the last 3 slides that we looked at, the cell wall and the cell surface. We do get into significantly more detail with this. When we get to Chapter 7, this is kind of just an introduction to it. So I will see you in Chapter 7.